So welcome everybody. This is the first event of our Institute for Women's Health at University College London, events for International Women's Day. And we normally obviously do these in person at UCL, but the problem we have with COVID has allowed us to have a more international panel today. So it's really exciting that we can have people from different countries join us, and thank you all the participants who are joining us on a Sunday evening. So the plan is we're hoping just to have the meeting for about an hour. And I just wanted to say a little bit about the Institute for Women's Health. We are a multidisciplinary institute at University College London that are working to make a difference to women and babies' health. So as I said, we've got several events on, and I will hopefully remind you of those at the end. So I don't want to take up too much time with my introduction, but just to say that today we have myself, Larisa is chairing the event. Unfortunately, Raj had his second COVID vaccine today and is not well. He sounded terrible on the phone. So he's not going to be able to join us this evening. But then we've got Mara, Emma, Mariana and Alexandra that are going to join us to talk today about your fertile years. So we were just saying that I do love a poll. So I'm just going to launch a poll for you. And just while we're waiting for the extra people to come on. So hopefully people can see that now. It's got 4 questions in it. What is your age? So hopefully some of you can click on those. I'm not sure if the panel can see it, but hopefully the participants can.
We can see it, but
you
I
can
can't
click on it too. Brilliant. We're starting to get some answers in. And then just to know, do you want children, or do you already have children? How informed do you feel about your fertility? And do you have any concerns about your fertility? So I'll just give everyone a minute or so to answer those. It's always good to have a little bit of background of the people that we're talking to. So we seem to have a good range of ages coming in so far. And so far, everyone wants children, is trying, or has some children, if you haven't decided. And a range of answers about your fertility and a range of answers about whether you're concerned. So I'll just give you a few more minutes. Actually, not a few more minutes, a few more seconds. Okay, have a quick click if you want to add anything. I think we'll stop there. So I'll just share the results. So you should be able to see those now. So most of the people on today are aged 31 to 35. And most of the people on today want to have children in the future. So that's almost half. And most of you feel moderately informed about your fertility. This is one of those trick questions, really, because it's difficult to know that you don't know something. So I will be asking you at the end whether you've learned anything today. So hopefully we'll see that. And do you have any concerns about your fertility? Yes, a lot of you have concerns about your fertility. So I'm going to just close that there. So, right, I'm going to go straight ahead now and introduce you to our wonderful chair, Larisa. Larisa Corda is an NHS obstetrician and gynaecologist, and she is a passionate champion of women's rights. She is a strong believer in empowering people with the education required to make the best choices about their own health, as well as treating issues in women's health holistically. She is a medical ambassador for Endometriosis UK and Saying Goodbye and Kicks Count, and recently won We Are the City Rising Star Award in Healthcare. And Larissa's very modest, but she has been doing brilliant work on TV and in the social media, especially on Instagram, where she's got a huge following. But you may well have seen Larisa, who regularly appears on British TV. So I'm now going to hand back to Larisa to introduce me, and then we will carry on with the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And thank you for inviting me to host this incredible event in honour of International Women's Day. It's great to see so many people join us this evening, especially when we've got an interview coming up later that a lot of people are very interested in hearing, aside from their fertility. So I just want to say I'm really appreciative of this opportunity to discuss something for International Women's Day that happens to be so close to many women's hearts, and that's this whole subject of fertility and how to become pregnant. And we're not going to shy away from tackling all the myths, the harrowing difficulties, the many harsh realities and truths that come with this subject. But most of all, I hope that the talk we're about to have and the discussions that we're going to invite you in on will leave us all feeling encouraged and inspired that fertility is finally entering mainstream education, and that one day in the not too distant future, fertility education will become the norm. So I am truly honoured to be part of a panel with an amazing set of incredible women who themselves have some amazing accomplishments between them, and who I know will bring real credibility and value to this entire talk. And I want to start off by introducing Joyce herself. So Joyce Harper is a Professor of Reproductive Science at the Institute of Women's Health at University College Hospital, and she's also Director of Education at the same institute. She's been working in the fertility field since 1987, originally actually as an embryologist. She went through 7 years of fertility treatment herself and is very lucky to have 3 sons. Her book, Your Fertile Years, is available from next month. And in my humble opinion, I told her this morning, and I said I was going to say it out loud because it's truly what I believe. Sorry, my dogs are going mad over there because someone's at the door. Just ignore that. Good intro for your book, Joyce. Even the dogs are going to be reading it. But what I want to say is that I truly think this book deserves to be part of every school curriculum. It's just so brilliant. It's so full of the most incredible facts and research. And I know that Joyce has spent a very, very long time creating this content. So I am honoured that she's here with us tonight to talk about her book and to try and educate us all a little bit more about reproductive health and fertility. So over to you, Joyce, really, and to answer the big question of tonight, which is, why do you think that fertility education is so important?
Thank you very much, Larissa. And I meant to say as well, if you have any questions as we're going through, we will answer the questions at the end. Please use the Q&A button that you should all be able to see. We might miss them if you put them in the chat, but in the Q&A, please put any questions and we will gather those together. So I'm going to spend hopefully less than 10 minutes talking about why I think we need fertility education. Can everyone see the slides? Always worry that I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm trying to do some things on social media. I'm not as good as Larissa. Larissa's amazing. But I am on Twitter and Instagram, and my address there is @Prof Joyce Harper. So I want to tell you why I wrote a book called Your Fertile Years, which is out next month. And I actually started writing this book in 1987. When I started working as an embryologist, I was very aware that many of my friends did not understand how their menstrual cycle worked. And we were all in our 20s and trying not to get pregnant. So I realized that whether we're trying to get pregnant or not, it's really important for people to understand how their body works, especially their fertile years. And time goes very quick, as I'm sure we're all aware, and I'm not quite sure where 30 years went. But finally, I have written the book, and I really wish I'd written it earlier. And in the book, I've got 12 chapters, and I'm not going to go through all of it today at all. But some of the key things I'm going to talk about in the book are the anatomy, male and female anatomy, especially the female, the menstrual cycle, ovulation, well-being and preconception health, contraception and sexually transmitted infections, fertility, infertility, pregnancy, and the menopause. Now, because we've got just a few weeks till my book's being released, every week I am writing a blog and making a short video, which I'm putting on my YouTube channel. And I'm putting the blogs on my website. I have two websites, but this is I'm putting them on globalwomenconnected.com about each chapter of the book. So tomorrow we're on chapter 8. But if you want to know anything more in more depth about any of the topics or get a little flavour of what I'm going to cover in the book, please visit the blogs on Global Women or see the videos on YouTube. Now, on Tuesday, I took part in a fertility show webinar. The fertility show are running a series at the moment called Let's All Talk Fertility. And the first question I was asked are, what are the 3 important things I think women should know about their fertility? And I'm going to talk to you about 2 of those this evening. And I'm just not going to talk about the third because of time. So I think the first thing is our menstrual cycle. As I said, that was my original aim for this book in the 80s, so that women can understand how their menstrual cycle works. And the second is that female fertility decline is real. And so I'm going to briefly talk about that this evening. But the third thing is preconception health. There's a lot to discuss about preconception health. I could talk for hours just on that topic. So I'm not going to mention it at all. There's a blog and a video that I mentioned some of it. But please do ask questions. We did have some questions on that topic on the fertility show webinar. And I did talk about it in more detail there. And that webinar is on their website now. So let's start with the menstrual cycle. So there are 2 key events that we need to consider, which are our period and our ovulation. And I'm sure that if you were taught anything about your menstrual cycle, the textbook understanding is that women have a 28-day cycle and we ovulate on day 14. So quite a few years ago, I thought, well, I'm sure this is so outdated and the data is very poor quality and very old data. And I became very aware of femtech, and femtech is women using technology for women's health, and especially the period trackers and the fertility and contraception apps. So I was very aware of Natural Cycles. It's an app that was first marketed as a contraceptive app and also can be turned around the other way to be a fertility app. And they ask women various characteristics about their menstrual cycle, and they use a marker of ovulation. So the markers of ovulation are either a woman takes her basal body temperature, which is her temperature first thing in the morning before she gets out of bed, and this rises when she ovulates, on the day she ovulates. She may check her cervical mucus, or she may use an ovulation test stick, which she just does a wee on like a pregnancy test. And this measures a hormone called luteinizing hormone, which rises just before, about 40 hours before a woman's going to ovulate. So Natural Cycles had loads of it. They literally had millions of menstrual cycles. So I went to them about 3 years ago and I said, can we have a look at all this amazing data that you've got? And can we see what women's menstrual cycles really are like? So we cut it down. They, as I said, they had millions and millions of cycles. We looked at over 600,000 menstrual cycles in detail. And we've got lots of data in that paper. It's open access. So anyone, if you put this title in Google, you'll come up with the paper. We found only 13% of women had a dead-on 28-day cycle, which would be our textbook cycle. 65% had cycles that varied between 25 and 30 days. So, you know, I'll give you some numbers and statistics, but the important thing is that women are all individual. So this was one of our really important findings of this, that there are a number of period trackers that will tell women that they're due to have their period on day 28. And actually they've had variation in their cycle. They're more like the 65%, where it moves between 25 and 30 days. And there are some studies showing that women can get a bit anxious when their period doesn't come, when their period tracker says it's going to come. So we submitted a paper last week where we've done some work looking at the accuracy of 10 of the common period tracker apps. And certainly we found that our take-home message is women must not get upset by the apps. They're not as accurate as they are. And we're not an algorithm. They're using an algorithm to look at our period dates, and we're not an algorithm, we're individual. So as I said, the second really key event in your menstrual cycle is your ovulation day. And ovulation is the day that your egg is released, and then you will be the most fertile you will be during your menstrual cycle. And the textbooks will tell us that ovulation is day 14. Our study with natural cycles and several other studies since that time have shown that ovulation day in large populations is closer to day 16 or 17. We found ours just below day 17 overall. For women with very short cycles, 21 days or less, ovulation was on average about day 12. For women with cycles of 31 days and above, ovulation was nearer day 19. And for women of 25 to 30 days, it was around about day 15. So if women are just looking at their dates and they have a period tracker that just says you're ovulating on day 14, this could be a problem if they're either using these apps as a contraception or as a way to try to get pregnant, because they could be missing their ovulation day. So the ovulation day is linked to our fertile window, and the fertile window are the days around the time of ovulation when we're most fertile. And this actually starts 5 days before ovulation, because sperm can live quite happily in the female reproductive tract, in the uterus or in the fallopian tubes for about 5 days. And still, if an egg comes along, it can still fertilize it. And so it's the 5 days before ovulation and the day of ovulation. And the egg only is viable for about 24 hours. So once it's ovulated, it's only got about 24 hours that it will be fertile, and then the ovulation window closes. And we published a paper last year looking at apps that were marketing themselves as fertility apps, and about half of them only looked at dates, which, as I said, is really inaccurate. But the other half did measure one of these markers of ovulation, such as basal body temperature or luteinizing hormone. So the next topic is the female fertility decline. And this is one that's a really controversial issue, but those of us that work in this field are pretty much in agreement that the quantity and quality of eggs decline with a woman's age. So if we look at quantity first, women are born with all the eggs they are going to have. And at birth, we have about 1 to 2 million potential eggs. By the time we get to puberty, we've lost the majority of those. We've only got about 300 to 400,000 eggs left. So we've lost a lot of them. And then from puberty until the menopause, I think we all know that we normally ovulate about 1 egg a month. We ovulate about 500 eggs in our entire fertile years, roughly. But if you do the maths from that, if we have about 400,000 eggs and we ovulate, say, 400 times, what happens to all the other eggs? Well, we lose about 1,000. So anywhere between sort of 600 and 1,000 eggs per month. So one gets ovulated, but the rest die. And that's one thing that I found in my research that lots of people aren't aware of. And this is one statistic that a few women recently have given me some grief about. The data shows, and in my book I explain the data in a hopefully a really readable way that people can understand. But by age 37, not in all women, this is again just the majority of cases, 90% of the eggs will be gone. They would have already died, and that's one of the reasons why it becomes much harder to get pregnant. And by the menopause, all viable eggs have gone. But also the quality of the eggs becomes more disrupted as we get older. So in the eggs, and again, I'm sorry to use technical terms of chromosomes, but again, in the book I will describe this, but we have chromosomes in the egg, and they're really important structures, and they become very fragile as a woman ages, and they can become very disruptive. And this causes the increase we see in miscarriage as women age, the increased risk of having a chromosomally abnormal child, such as a child with Down syndrome, and a lower risk of conception. So this is one of the graphs that's in my book. We see women's age down the bottom here, and we see that fertility decreases with age, and the risk of and this is because of quantity and quality, and the risk of miscarriage, mainly because of quality of the eggs, increases. So remember these ages here, that the most important age we talk about is over 35. And so I always say evolution has not kept up with feminism. So it is unfortunately all about the egg, and this is data from the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. This is data on fertility patients that have gone through in vitro fertilization. So this isn't natural conception, but this very similar data is seen. And the HFEA data, this is all on their website. They group women under 35 together. This is the birth rate per embryo transferred. So women under 35 are grouped together because a woman of 33 and a woman of 29 has a very similar chance of live birth from fertility treatment. But then they use ages in just 2-year batches. And you'll see here that by the time a woman gets to her over 40, her chance of having a baby from IVF is around 10%. And 43 and over, it really drops under 5%. And we don't go above 44. The chance of a live birth from IVF at 45 and beyond is almost zero. But if we use a donor egg, and donor eggs are from younger women who are under 35, we see that this graph for the same ages is almost level. And this is, again, stressing it's because of the age of the egg. So with a young egg from someone under 35, a woman of almost any age will have as good as pregnancy rate as if she was under 35. So women who are older can carry the baby. There are obstetric risks. I'm sure Larisa would have something to say about that. There are huge obstetric risks to the mother and the baby, but it is possible. So it's all about the egg. And this is a graph from the OECD. You can have a look at their data from their website. They collect demographic data on lots of different things from many, many countries. And this graph, the black diamonds are the mean age that women gave birth in 1970. The white diamonds are the same data for 1995. And the blue columns are for 2017. And you can see that in many countries, almost every country, it's gone up over these time periods. And in many countries, it's now between age 30 and 32 that women are having their first child. But it's age 35 where fertility really starts to decline. So in 2016, Adam Balan, Jackie Bovin, and myself, with a number of stakeholders such as the British Fertility Society, Sexpression and Brook, etc., we set up the UK Fertility Education Initiative, and we've published a number of papers, including some great work with Gabby and Jessica, who run something called Fertility Fest. And we looked at how we could possibly deliver fertility education to teenagers. And we've made 2 animations, but really importantly, in the UK, the Department for Education never had the word fertility in any of their curricula. And in 2019, their new relationship and sex education curricula now says that we have to educate school children about the facts about reproductive health, including fertility and potential impact of lifestyle on fertility for men, women. And they added on in the second version, menopause. They've just tacked that on. That's why that sentence is not very well written. Anyway, so we now have to educate children also about the menopause. So there's a lot of work to be done. And we have got together now to form an international fertility education initiative. And it is our mission to improve fertility and reproductive health awareness through education. And we are a multidisciplinary team, and we have some of our team on today. There's 4 of us from the international committee here today, and we're a group of scientists, clinicians, nurses, psychologists, bioethicists, etc. And we are working together to help deliver fertility education. So we made a fertility education poster, and we are now exploring and validating this poster to see how people feel about it. It's been translated into over 30 languages, and the aim of this poster was to increase public awareness and debunk the myths. There is especially some bad press from women, unfortunately, who are of the older age group, who have now are having fertility problems. But the work in Denmark that's been done so far has found that when young adults are shown this poster, they're very, very responsive. So we are now doing work with different groups of age groups and different demographics to see how we can improve this poster. And the research from the fertility education group is divided into two categories. The first is to evaluate knowledge and attitudes to fertility education and family building. So that will hopefully lead us to develop and validate tools for education. So the poster, we've also got a video of the poster, is a start just to get the conversation going. But we have got a lot of work to do to make these education tools much more effective. So I just want to finish off by sharing with you a study we did last year looking at women's attitudes to having children. We're running this survey in men this year, and Mara and I are working together to run these surveys in Greece this year. And there's a lot of data, and we're just getting ready to submit this paper for publication. But the mean age women wanted to have children, we asked them this question in the survey, was actually age 30. And we asked them the reasons affecting their decision to have children. And these were the options they could have chosen. They could choose more than one. And the top 3 reasons were, I am ready to have children now, I am not financially ready, or they were developing their career. So this information will help us develop the right and appropriate tools for women and young adults and school children to help them understand this. And for men, absolutely, this is for people, not just for women. We just started with a women's survey, but we're doing the men's, as I said, this year. So that's everything from me until I answer some questions. I hope I haven't been too long, but I will now stop and I'll be quiet, and I'll hand over to Larisa, who's going to introduce you to Mara.
Thank you, Joyce. It was brilliant to hear actually all about the wonderful work that you and the fertility education group have already done and are doing. And there's so many challenges we face about educating men and women on the issues that affect us from puberty into the menopause. But I think we'll all agree that you've made tremendous strides in this and already accomplished so much. So thank you, is what I have to say. And also for your incredible contribution with this book, which I am sure will become part of the curriculum in the not too distant future. So I'm now going to introduce our second panelist, who is Dr. Maria Simpolo, and she is an associate professor of physiology of reproduction at the University of Athens Medical School, and she's also a consultant clinical embryologist and geneticist. She is chair of MyFertility in Greece, and her personal mission in the scientific community is to contribute to the successful treatment and management of challenging reproductive journey that infertile patients face. Her latest research interests have focused on raising awareness on fertility and reproductive health to enable informed choices for the creation of families. She hopes her work will prevent people from failing age-related and fertility. Sorry, I'll start again with this. She hopes her work will prevent people from facing age-related infertility due to a lack of education and the limitations on our human biology. So I would like to ask Dr. Maria if she could tell us a little bit about why she considers fertility education to be so important.
Thank you, Larisa, and it's lovely to be here. Thank you, Joyce, for organizing.
Oh, can we hear you? Can everyone hear Dr. Maria?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Can everyone else hear?
Yeah, your Wi-Fi just went a bit, but carry on, Mara. I should be fine.
Okay. Just let me know if we have any problems and I should stop and check again. So I was just saying, it just comes naturally for me to try to answer this question, why we need fertility education, simply because I see these needs all the time at various settings, at different levels. So I see it when I teach at medical school, the second-year students and the sixth-year medical students that are going to go on and become physicians. So obviously we need to, we talk a lot about reproduction, but we don't really have created a space and room for fertility education. So I see it there, I see it socially when I talk to my friends, and some of them are considering having a baby in the future, or they're trying now, or they're facing difficulties. And I realize, just as Joyce said, and for us being involved in this field, it's always shocking to realize how little the general population and the public and people in general know about how our body works and what our limitations are. But personally for me, being an infertility specialist and a clinical embryologist, from that perspective, the real driver for me is the feedback that we get from patients. So we see women that are in need of fertility treatment because of age-related infertility. And when it is explained to them that there's no pathology, there's nothing wrong with them, it's just the natural process of aging that, as Joyce very aptly pointed out, affects the quality and the quantity of eggs. And there's nothing to be done on that, and I will get to that in a moment, discussing the myth about how powerful IVF is. It's really shocking, and it's the response we get is, I didn't know about that, and why didn't I know about that? And had I known about that, I would have probably done something, or I would have planned differently. So I think this is why we're here, and this is definitely why MyFertility was formed, in the footsteps following on the British Fertility Education Initiative, and with the help and aid of Professor Harper, moving everything forward, and with motivation and skill. So we're an initiative dedicated to raising awareness and educating people in Greece on matters related to our fertility and reproductive health. And what we've done is we got together, there's a group of multidisciplinary team. We have a group of senior professionals. We have physicians, gynecologists, clinical embryologists, physiologists, biopathologists, medical ethics lawyers, people in the education, people from the government, representing the government and the business sector. And all of us are brought together as a very heterogeneous group. But we're very passionate about bringing this to the people and explaining what is really happening. A, explaining where we are right now, and B, trying to find solutions to overcome the real problems. So our ultimate goal is not to help people make decisions or guide them, but we're here to offer the facts. We're here to just let everyone know this is what happens with regards to human biology and our fertility, and ultimately enable informed decision. We want everyone to have the facts right, so that they can make the right decisions for themselves when the time is right. And what we see, I mean, the data is there. We see the mean age of women at first birth rising, and it keeps rising. It may probably keep on rising, and respectively, fertility index in Greece, it's dropping, and it keeps on dropping. And like I said before, age-related infertility is increasingly reported as infertility etiology in IVF. And it appears that it is due to lack of information and the limitations of our reproductive system. And this can all be avoided. We can somehow help our future patients not to become our future patients, some sort of intervention through education. So this is how we see ourselves, sort of like superheroes maybe. But another aspect that we all need to consider is are the misconceptions. So we need to separate myth from reality, and there is an overestimation to what IVF can really offer and what IVF can do. IVF, as Joyce has said, I'm going to borrow her own words, does not perform miracles. It's not a miracle maker. We can help, but it can only do as the compromised quality of an oocyte that belongs to a woman of an advanced age. That is something that we cannot do. So we need to understand that, and it's the lack of knowledge and understanding on these matters that may lead to the risk of unintentional childlessness. And Joyce has done important research on that, and even despite receiving fertility treatment, because people think that, okay, I may be a bit late, but there's IVF. But that's not really always the case, and we need to let everyone know that, so that they can, like I said, make informed decisions. So this is why we're here. We're here to report on these facts and these limitations, and to set the record straight, and just say things are what they are. And at the moment, sex education, relationship education, and fertility education is not really there in Greece. I mean, like I said, even in the medical school curriculum, we talk about reproduction, but we don't really talk a lot about fertility and the limits. And that is something that we all think should change for all the reasons that that I discussed just now, and that we're all fighting for. So the agenda is, again, promote knowledge, understanding of fertility, and we're going to use research to show exactly where we are. We want to see where we are at the moment, what's really happening, what's the real situation, what we're dealing with. And then once that is out, then we need to, and that will show, that will indicate the need for fertility education. Then we need to discuss strategies, how we can help, how we can realize fertility education, and hopefully help people make informed decisions. So that's all from me. And again, lovely to be here and looking forward to answer some of the questions. Larisa, you're muted.
Yeah, Larisa, just unmute. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was looking through some of the questions that were filtering through. I think it muted me by accident. Thank you, Dr. Mara. That was so interesting, and also really great to get the Greek perspective on this, and what's happening there, and the fact that you say, I mean, I think it seems global, this problem and issue that we have around fertility and the many myths and misconceptions that circulate around this, with lots of people being led to believe that IVF is a cure, and you know, can work miracles. And I'm really glad that you spoke about the fact that actually, you know, we're a long way from that. Things have certainly got a lot better, but we definitely not able to necessarily help everyone through IVF. So thank you for broaching that very difficult subject. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our third panelist, who is Emma Haslett. Now, Emma is a journalist and a podcaster who launched The Big Fat Negative, which is a show about infertility, IVF, and the trials of trying for a baby, with her co-host Gabby back in 2018. She has been through 5 rounds of fertility treatment herself, with numerous cancelled rounds, and finally had her daughter Noah in 2019 after 4 years of struggle. So thank you, Emma, for joining us. And I'd like to ask you why you think that fertility education is so important.
Can I just start by saying thank you, guys, Joyce, for having me on here, because I'm pretty sure I'm the only person on here without a PhD after my name. Am I?
No, me too. I'm not PhD either, so I join you in that.
You're a doctor though, Larissa. You're still a doctor. I do have a 2-1 in media studies, so anybody needs information on that, I can help. So I thought I'd kick this off with a kind of illustration, which is a story about a really good friend of mine, who is one of the most educated people I know. She went to Oxford. She's very, very high up in her profession. She's extremely successful. And about probably around the time that I was really realizing that things were not going well for me, she came up to me and she said, because I talked about it a lot because I'm a blabbermouth, she came up to me and she said, I think I'm going through the same thing that you are. I've been trying for a year. I haven't got pregnant. Every time my period comes, I cry. Like, I'm finding this really hard. I don't know what to do. And we were on this kind of walk around central London, around Bloomsbury. And I said to her, well, you know, have you done all the normal stuff? You've obviously gone on Google. She was like, no, I'm trying to be really chilled about it. I was like, no one's chilled about trying for a baby, come on. And so I said to her, look, well, the first thing you need to know is that you've basically, your egg hangs around for up to 24 hours a month. So you've got 1 day. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, you've got 1 day a month that you can conceive, and the rest of the month is really, I mean, obviously the sperm will hang around for a bit, but you really don't have a lot of time. She was like, right, okay. And then she went away and she bought some ovulation testing kits, and then 2 months later she phoned me and was like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, great. And I think that's a real, you know, illustration. Somebody's so smart. And you know, it was the same when I first started trying for a baby. I had no idea how the menstrual cycle went. You know, I didn't even really know about periods because I'd been on the pill since I was 16, and I went off when I was 29. And So I was having these very, very, very regular monthly bleeds and had no real idea at all. So I think, one of the things that we're all aware of is that fertility levels are falling. And, Mara just then mentioned Greece's falling fertility index. It's happening pretty much everywhere. And in a way, that's a good thing, because it means that we are making absolutely sure that we are in a position to raise children. And that's wonderful. There's fewer unwanted children around because we're getting it right before we have kids. But what we don't have in tandem with that is an awareness of what's going on, what's happening. And I feel like with, all parts of life, but especially with fertility, knowledge is power. And that's so important. And again, one more illustration. I'm going to keep this really short, and I don't have slides because I've got a PowerPoint allergy. But I posted about this seminar on my Instagram. I used Joyce's poster, and the reaction was quite a lot stronger than I expected. There was some fake news kind of people on there. There were people saying this is wrong. I was like, Joyce is a professor, right? She does science. But part of it was people saying, I find this very triggering, and that's people in their late 30s. And it's completely understandable, because if you are having a hard time having a baby and you are being told it's gonna get harder, and you've got COVID, so you've got, you're being made to wait for IVF, you're being made to wait for treatment, it is awful. It feels unthinkably difficult. The clock is ticking so loudly. So I think, what's really important is that we arm people with this knowledge early. People need to know what they're talking about early. And, hopefully in the future, if people know what they're doing early on, then situations like this can be avoided, because education is important, and education early is really important. And that's it, really. That's why fertility education is important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. I think thank you for sharing your experience, and congratulations on the birth of Noah. I know that was a huge struggle for you, and you very openly shared that struggle on your social media accounts, which is just so brave. I know you will have inspired many men and women going through that yourself, but also your friend's account. And it's so true that another one of the myths that circulates is that if you're well educated, and if you supposedly had access to some of this education, then you should understand the facts and figures and should be able to sort of plan your life ahead. But the truth of the matter is that most of us don't have access to credible information, at least not at the age that we need it. And most of our education is focused totally around the opposite side of things, which is how not to get pregnant, and not at all around how difficult it can be.
It's almost harder with the internet as well, because there's so much out there that conflicts with what you need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And, everyone claiming to be an expert in this and having sort of personal bits of advice, well-intentioned, of course, but at the same time, as you say, it can be deeply triggering, even when it comes from fact and science. It's very difficult to, I think, to assimilate that information, especially when it hasn't been told to you on time. So it's just highlighted the need for more work to be done. And thank you for raising it, and for your contribution as well through your podcast and through your media channels as well. Brilliant work. So much appreciated by huge parts of our society. So I'm next going to introduce our fourth panelist, who is Mariana Martins. Mariana is an assistant professor at Porto University and clinical psychologist who specialised in reproductive health. Her research within reproductive health has been focused on protective and risk factors that influence a couple's relationship and decisions to fertility care, gestational loss, and also family formation. So, Dr. Mariana, I'd like to invite you to answer the question we've asked everyone so far, and that's why you think that fertility education is of utmost importance.
So thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity to be here. This is a great initiative. Definitely one of the advantages of lockdown, I would say, is that we can all be together with such short planning. I will try to be very quick, because I saw a lot of interesting questions that I think that this would be great for discussion if we had the time, and also because my esteemed colleagues already said so much about it. But this is just to give you more of a psychosocial and well-being perspective of why we need education when it comes to fertility. So, of course, yes, we are all aware that fertility rates are decreasing. Here in Portugal, we are at the bottom of Europe pretty much. And it's not because people do not want to be parents anymore, because everyone still wants to get to parenthood, but mostly due to the postponement of childbearing, women's and men's age at first childbirth, of course, and the increasing of that age. So this is due to societal changes. We all know that. We are all aware of the difficulties in balancing career goals, personal goals with family goals, the economic crisis, the economic stability, the COVID now. Most recently, it seems that women not finding a suitable partner is also an issue. It's not imperative per se, of course, but I assume that there are a lot of questions already about freezing eggs. So I would love to have this discussion. These are very hard to address questions. These are hard to change, but there are actually other factors that are modifiable. A lot of times we hear a patient say, if only have I known, like Mara has said. So, and these are factors like the decrease of the probability of getting a live birth with age, the impact of BMI. Someone asked for that. So yes, fitness is important. Sexually transmissible infections, but also the lack of knowledge when it comes to the success of fertility treatments. Mara already talked about this. So we tend to believe that if we do not conceive spontaneously, it should be pretty easy with some help, because most of us know more successful stories than the unsuccessful. So thanks, Emma, for sharing. And in fact, it's the other way around. So at least in terms of cycles, okay? So I think that's a very important thing to retain. Also, for those who are actually trying to get pregnant, there is a lot of misinformation out there, low knowledge. This is what we've been saying here. Of course, we learn all our lives how to not to get pregnant, right? So there's only one day of where the egg is around, only one fertile week in a cycle, but there are guidelines and scientific guidelines. One would not expect this, but there are guidelines, for example, to have sexual intercourse every other day because of the stress of targeting the fertile week, when in fact we psychologists see the pressure of having intercourse every other day. Okay, so it could be even more stressful, and we have to look out for what is the strategy, what is the better strategy. But if we had the knowledge, I think that it's more easy to choose. Okay, so after 12 months trying, you actually tend to have less intercourse. Okay, so the paradox comes in, which likely will not be helpful, of course. And the same happens after seeing a specialist. When you see a specialist, you tend to put your fertility in the hands of the doctor. And it's just like Emma's friend's example. I mean, maybe if you had an ovulation kit, a predictor test, maybe you would get pregnant and you didn't even know. So that's important information. Okay, so just a very simple example here. You have a 40-year-old woman, Claire. She's the average European height and weight. She's trying to have her first child, and her chance of spontaneous conception is 10%. 23 in a cycle if she tries with her own eggs, and 55 if she tries with donated eggs. These estimates, of course, get down if Claire decides to wait. So the waiting time, and a lot of you want information about that, is also important. But also, if Claire has a good adherence to treatment, the estimates go up. So if Claire goes up to cycle number 3 with her own eggs, it takes her from 23 to 47%, which is an increase. But what happens is that a lot of people discontinue treatment, 1 in 4. Okay, so one of the biggest problem is this dropout, and this is because treatment is exhausting, and the psychological burden is on the top 3 reasons to drop out, to discontinue. So if people do not get the adequate help in decision making and in counseling and still maintain their wish for a child, there are consequences for mental health, for relationships, and for psychological adjustment. Okay, so we know this now. And that's why I think information is so important. And I just want to say that we are here because we are celebrating International Women's Day. And yes, of course, it is our bodies. It is our final decision, I think. But also we see that there is a lot of sharing of responsibility. Someone was asking already, I saw, for what about men and sperm quality? Yes, it decreases. I'm sure that Joyce and Mara have a lot more information than me, but also psychologically, treatment do affect men, and also they should be in the equation if you are a couple. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mariana, and thank you for raising the subject of men as well, because I think so often they're sidelined as part of this whole fertility discussion. But of course, there's such a huge and critical component to all of this. And yes, the importance of mental health, which is so often underestimated, but has huge repercussions and consequences for both men and women who are struggling through subfertility. I've certainly read statistics which compare the rates of depression the same as for patients who are diagnosed with cancer. So we're talking about something that really has an extreme and harrowing effect on people, but yet isn't discussed often enough. So thank you for your insights into that. And last but not least, I think we have Alexandra joining us. Is that right?
Yes.
Hi, Alexandra.
Hi.
So Alexandra is a clinical embryologist who's currently developing strategies to raise awareness about reproductive health, to promote informed decisions about family planning, and to reduce the age-related fertility decline. Thank you for joining us, Alexandra. And I'm going to ask you the same question of why you think fertility education is so important to all of our societies worldwide at the moment.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank you all to invite me to be here today. It's a pleasure. I'm just starting my project, and I must say that I was mostly inspired by Professor Joyce Harper and the work she has been developing. To me, the fertility education gives us the opportunity to shift from treatment to prevention when we are talking about women in fertility. And as embryologists, I saw that every day. Actually, we can't solve all the infertility problems, and particularly when we are talking about age-related infertility, we face a real challenge in ART. So for me, fertility education gives us the opportunity to inform and to avoid infertility problems.
Brilliant. Larisa.
Thank you very much for that. And as you say, I think you know, this is a great opportunity to kind of raise some of these questions and to talk about them, and also what you said about Professor Joyce Harper being an inspiration. She's an inspiration to us all, absolutely, including myself. So yes, I would completely concur with that. So I think we are ready to go on to the questions, right? We've had quite a lot. I've just been trying to screen through them all as they've been coming in, and I think we're going to try. How long do we have, Joyce?
Well, I know I was going to say that we'll be exactly on time, but I think, you know, if some people need to go, it's fine. We've got 12 questions and they're not too complicated. I know one person's got their hand up, but I think, Larisa, I think we can whiz through them, and we'll see how long it takes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay.
Answers short, but I think they're quite forward. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll try and summarize the gist of them as I say them as well. So we'll try and get through every single one. But just before we start that, there is a question that I really wanted to bring up with all of you. And you've already mentioned and alluded to it. So it's this question of, if you are 35 and over, is it too late to be hearing this stuff? And, you know, what can you actually realistically do if the first time you've seen some of these facts and figures is now and you're about to be 40 or you're in your 40s and struggling to conceive?
So I'll just quickly say that I think we need to be very sensitive in our language, and we need to find the best way of helping women who are getting anxious and stressed. I didn't start trying to have children until 35, and it took me 7 years of IVF. So I'm totally that demographic. So I totally understand. This is a really important group for me to feel sympathy to and work out the best ways. I don't have the right answers yet. And I know some women have got upset with what I've said. After the fertility show, I got one person really wrote a whole tirade of negative comments about me, and called me lots of names. So we've got to find the right language, but I'll hand over to the others to say, did Mariana want to say something?
Sure, yeah, I think it's never too late. I mean, it's never too late to be informed, of course. And there are a lot of things that you can do besides getting checked, besides getting the right information. One of the questions that I think is very important that is here also, which is related, is where can I get information online from credible sources? And of course, this is, I mean, you will see everything, but I would say that go to your GP and to your gynecologist, talk to him about your concerns. Go see a fertility doctor if you want. You don't have to go through treatment, and try to understand, be aware of your cycle. I don't know if you can be over 35 and you can be without a partner, or just trying to be aware of where the future will hold for you. I mean, but we do that with everything, don't we? I think that we do that with careers, we do that with other personal goals, such as, I don't know, fitness or everything. I mean, you just have to include your fertility goals within your life plan. So I don't think it's any different with any other thing. Within all the uncertainty we have, and we all have now been very accustomed to uncertainty in general in the last year, but within all the uncertainty, I think that you just, the controls, having information gives you some control. We know this from psychological literature in general. So just, I don't know, buy Joyce's book and read it and be aware of your fertility. That's a
right answer.
It would help at least to be aware of what the future will hold for you.
There will be some people who won't agree with some of the things that I've written, because there are always people that disagree. We look at COVID, I mean, everything. I went for a walk today with my friend who works on he's an environmentalist. He said, no one agrees about climate change. Because I was telling him about the issue we have here and about this question. In my book, I read every single paper I could, interpreted it. I mean, many of them I already knew, obviously, and wrote it in an accessible way. That the person on Twitter, when they said they didn't agree with the International Fertility Education experts or the American Society of Reproductive Medicine or the British Fertility Society or any other society that works on this, they quoted a blog from a doctor who wrote a blog and said female fertility decline is over exaggerated. So this is the trouble, as Emma said, there's a trouble with the internet. We will get this information, and what we're trying to do, we're trying to do is give people the most correct information we can, and then we're not telling them to do anything, or just have the information and then make their decision. As I said, we're all individuals, but I think I think I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything, but we've got some great questions, so I think we could move on.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And addressing what is a really important question. I think we can all agree that some of these topics that we've discussed also this evening are deeply triggering and emotive, and it's, treading that fine line between fact and science, as well as, encouragement and hope for the future, and what research is hopefully going to get us to. So I hope that's been helpful for anyone who's been wondering that, or is in that difficult situation of being over 35. Okay, so lots of questions. One of the main questions we've had in is people wanting to find out about egg freezing. So mainly how they go about doing this, and at what age they should be thinking about freezing their eggs. So anyone want to take that question on?
So I wrote a whole chapter on egg freezing because I know it's a really hot topic. And my view, when I was in my 20s, I thought, oh, if only I could freeze my eggs. I was with someone who wasn't ready to have children, etc., etc. But now I am concerned about the way it's been so commercialized and almost being marketed as, finish your education, go and have your eggs frozen. And I don't want to see people in the fertility clinic. I don't want to medicalize fertility. I would rather people have informed choices and hope that more have natural fertility. So to get people in the fertility clinic is uncomfortable for me. I think that it has to be the sooner the better. If you're under 35, definitely better, but even under 30, there are problems in some countries with legislation. If you do go through it, I really think you need more than one cycle, no matter what your age. But if you start doing this at 40, it's individual choice. If you've got no other choice, and you're not with a partner or not ready or whatever, then that might be your only option. But for me, sooner the better. Yeah, Emma.
There's a really good podcast that's just come out by Sophia Money-Coates called, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about egg freezing. I think if you look for it on your whatever you use, and it's really interesting, really, it talks you through the steps, talks you through all the kind of stuff about how to find a clinic and things like that. It's obviously not, as Joyce says, the ideal situation or solution, but it's one solution, I guess.
All the studies I've seen that have looked at the demographics of the women that are freezing their eggs, 90% of them are ready to have children now, but they don't have a partner. So we've done a study, but Heidi Mertz, loads of people have done research on this, and it's that they don't have a partner or willing partner. So that's the group at the moment. It might change over years, but yeah, we've just got to raise awareness about fertility so that women can make the right choice. But yeah, Emma, if Emma can if you can email me that link on Global Women, any links like this we talk about, I have got a post about this evening on Global Women, so I can add people's social media contact from the panel, and I can add any posts. So if Emma sends me that link, I'll put that about egg freezing on. That would be great.
It's called brilliant. Thank you, Joyce. It's called freezing time.
Freezing time.
Put the link for sure.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that the great thing about egg freezing is there is lots of information out there about it at the moment, and lots and lots of people are talking about it. As Joyce says, it is quite commercialized in certain aspects. I mean, certainly if you look at America and the way that it's being done there, it's quite different here in the UK. But yeah, really important that people have all the facts that they need to be able to make those informed choices and do egg freezing on time as well, because that's one of our other questions coming up later. But moving swiftly on to another question, and someone is asking, can we ask our GP to refer us for a fertility assessment, and how do we do this?
Can I tell you that in Copenhagen, they have a team have set up a wonderful clinic. So in the UK, we go for our contraception to a family planning clinic. It's the wrong name, but it could be the right name if you could go there to get assessed for your fertility. And I know that people can go online and have AMH measured or this measured or whatever, but it's more complicated than that, much more complicated than that. And there's two people involved, as we've said. It's not just looking at the woman's fertility is just half the story. And I know Raj would say that. He wrote a brilliant quote about it. It does take two. In Copenhagen, it's a health funded clinic. Any couple or person who they shouldn't be trying to have children yet, but they're thinking about it soon, they can go there and get everything checked. But the clinic is still looking at a long piece of work that's going to take many years to find out what were the factors that really predicted that there was going to be a problem. We don't really know that yet. So things like AMH, you can still get pregnant if it's low, high, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's having that right information. We don't know all the answers yet. So the Copenhagen system is great. And it is a trial, but it would be fabulous if we had that in every country. So when you went to the family planning clinic, it was because you're actually planning a family and not a family. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else wanted to add anything, but that would be great. So my question, in answer to that question, in the UK, you can only go to your GP and take things further if you've been trying for a year. Because
I've been writing about this quite a lot recently, about early stuff. And if you have irregular periods, if you have very painful periods, if you've ever had like an STD, a serious STD like chlamydia, all those are reasons for you to start exploring earlier than a year, apparently.
Yeah, and that's great. Yeah, I think I think in the UK, if you want to take things further, you've really almost got to demand it and keep at it. So I think you just got to go to your GP and be assertive and tell them you've got real concerns and you want to get it sorted out. You know, if you hurt a bit of your body or any other bit of your body, you don't have to say, "I'll come back in a year and see if you're okay." So yeah, I absolutely agree with Emma. Just go. And there is a question about irregular periods. I don't know if we should follow on with that.
Yeah, that's coming up in a bit. I just wanted to ask Dr. Mara and Dr. Mariana what the situation is like in Greece and Portugal. Can women have fertility assessments there? Or again, do they have to sort of demand them?
In Greece, it's a completely, totally different system to the UK. So basically, you have access to the fertility and the infertility specialist. The moment you think you're ready to go, you just make an appointment and there you are. So it's really easy to get treatment in Greece, and it's really easy to navigate these difficulties that you guys are facing in the UK and other European countries, and also legislation, like Joyce mentioned before, is a huge obstacle sometimes. But in Greece, it's really straightforward. It's really, I don't know how the situation is like in Portugal, Alexandra.
We have a system pretty close to the NHS, so it has to be your GP to refer you. You have to be trying to conceive for 12 months or 6 if you're older, 35 or over. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting that it varies. But I think what drives me a little bit nuts in the UK here is that the first time you actually get to see a specialist like a gynecologist or an obstetrician is when you're pregnant, and not necessarily before that. And I just think it's so important that women have access to a gynecologist before that stage, even for their smears. But you know, that's another subject we'll perhaps tackle another time. Moving on. I know we're strapped for time.
The thing that irritates me is that actually, when you say I've been trying to conceive, no one asks you, well, what exactly is that? So, I mean, we all know that it's an arbitrary concept, this 12 months. So, did you try to conceive when you ovulated all the 12 times, or did you only do that one time, or don't you know even, you know, you don't have any idea? So it's so different.
Yeah. It's true. And the first time that a woman might learn about what she is and isn't doing, and the same for a man, or get any kind of credible advice, is after they've already spent a year. They've already kind of potentially wasted a year, which we know can be critical depending on your age. So yeah, lots of things we need to improve and do better. Okay, moving on to some other questions. So someone asking about credible resources of education, and a question tied in with that is how reliable is the information we find on social media? How can we make sure that it's verified and fact-checked? So anyone want to answer that first?
I think Larisa, yourself and Emma might want to do that. You've got much more experience on social media than any of us. I'm learning.
Emma, do you want to take that?
One thing I say to people is get familiar with the NICE guidelines if you're in the UK. So the NICE is the National
Institute
of Clinical Excellence.
Clinical Excellence, and it advises essentially it advises the NHS on what kind of treatments to offer and that kind of thing. And if you Google NICE guidelines in fertility, you will come up with all this stuff and that tells you exactly what it advises or how it advises certain conditions should be treated, the kind of tests you should have, what conditions you should have the tests under, like why you would have certain tests, and also, you can kind of understand a little bit more of what they recommend and what they don't recommend. And I think that's so important to know. The HFEA, which regulates IVF and egg freezing in the UK, that also has a website full of stuff, and Joyce helps to advise them on how they should see various treatments. So yeah, I mean, for me, those are the two really, really important, very credible sources.
Yeah, I'd agree.
We are trying to, we've got a fertility education website from our UK fertility education, and we are trying to get funding to make it a lot more informative. So there is some basic information there, but the fertility education poster that is there, which obviously I think is very credible. So the best website I've seen is the Australian one, and I'll put the link to that on the Global Women Connected post. And in Australia, they've had funding from the government to develop fertility education. So they are way, way, way ahead. And we're working on the fertility education initiative with the leader there, Karen Hammerberg, who is a wonderful, informative person. But their website is all singing and dancing, and it does provide people, it has links to if you're drinking alcohol and your BMI and your nutrition. I know there's lots of questions about, is it important to have a BMI under 30?
Yeah.
It's a bit more complicated than that, I'm afraid. But if you go to the Australian website, is it called ourfertility.org.au? But I'll put the link on the Global Women site so you can see. But that is really interactive, and it's designed for people who are trying to get pregnant. So really, that's really highly credible.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. And just to add to what you've already said, I would say, that the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists, British Fertility Society, they have a lot of updated information, especially with regards to COVID and fertility and whether vaccination is safe or not. So they constantly update their guidelines as the information filters down. And then some of the charities like Fertility Fairness and Fertility Network too, they're very, very credible sources of information. But when it comes to social media, I mean, it can feel a little bit like the Wild West. Sometimes you're just not sure what you're reading and whether it's been verified. And of course, the difference with social media is that there's lots of opinions which people may express, and lots of different experts who are contributing to the discussion. I think it can be really great in terms of being a useful information source, and especially, in terms of being quite cutting edge and allowing people to see what's current and new. But I think you've just got to be careful about, who you follow and, whether they are a reputable source of information. Obviously, if they've been verified on Instagram or social media, that helps. But then again, having said that, there's lots of accounts that haven't been, that have great information, who I follow as well. So you've got to be a little bit careful, but do some of that research yourself depending on the other content that they post. Okay, so this one's about men. So very importantly, someone asking about, should men consider freezing their sperm? And how worried should men be about their fertility?
I know there's an American company that wants everyone to freeze their eggs and sperm when they're 20 to help their infertility. I personally, I don't know what the others feel, I don't think most men need to freeze their sperm. Men's fertility does decline with age, slightly over 45, and there are other issues that they can get errors in their chromosomes that can cause problems that we have mentioned on the fertility education poster. But we have to remember that one ejaculate from a man contains about 100 million sperm. So men are producing lots and lots of sperm. So fertility does go down, but you know, I always say one of my little tasks I give people, think of the older celebrity men that you know that father children, and try and think of women of the same age, and you can't. So many in their 60s and 70s. So yes, male fertility is really important, and male infertility accounts for about half of infertility. But yes, it does have different parameters to a woman. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything.
No, that's pretty. Yeah, I mean, I think men obviously have a distinct advantage, you know, that in that they can carry on, you know, contributing their sperm up into older age, and they're producing sperm every 3 months. But at the same time, we do have more evidence now coming out to say that they also experience an age-related decline, especially over the age of 40. And I think, you know, some of the myths that surround male fertility are that there's this perception that men will be fertile right up into their 80s, so it's okay, they don't need to take care of themselves. And I think we need to, you know, get around that. Obviously, you know, if you're smoking, drinking copious amounts of alcohol, they're the obvious things that are going to affect your sperm. But you know, much like women, there are important parts, and I know this is in your book, Joyce, as well, talking about nutrition and exercise, and you know, managing your stress, which is really, really important. So yeah, men do absolutely need to take note of that as well.
Really interesting data, recent data, is that men that have spermatogenesis defects can pass it through their sons. So I think that we should also be aware of that. And those defects increase with age. So it's, you know, it's not all good for men and all bad for women.
No, I agree. And the other thing, there's a lot of research now into the nutrition and the well-being of the guy in relation to the long-term health of the child. So obese men have issues with their fertility, but also they affect the long-term health of their future children. So there was a question on the chat about nutrition, and yes, there are lots of, you know, you need to be having a healthy diet. There should be some moderate exercise. You should be leading that relatively healthy lifestyle. And someone said on to me recently, oh, but we've got to have some fun. But I think you can still have fun and just lead a healthier life, especially around the time you're trying to get pregnant. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah, and it's such empowering information, because there are things that we can directly control. There's so much about fertility that we can't control, but yet these are factors that we can. And it isn't just about numbers. It's, you know, how good is that sperm? And, you know, potential, like we've just heard, defects that you may pass on. You want to enhance the health of your child, ideally. So doing that through various different lifestyle factors is definitely going to help. And I think, again, it's a really important conversation to have. I personally think that men also need to have MOTs, much like women. But again, maybe a conversation for another time. Or one of your polls, Joyce. Perhaps we should put that on there. Should men get a fertility MOT? Okay, so next question is, what impact does amenorrhea have on fertility? So amenorrhea meaning the absence of periods.
So this would have been a question for Raj, but Larisa, I think as the clinician on board that you should answer it. But if you're not having your normal menstrual cycle, and there's also a question about irregular cycles. Same question. Those two together. If you're having irregular cycles, or you're not having any menstrual cycle, so we don't know if you're ovulating, or if you are ovulating, when you're ovulating. So there are ways that we can try and bring that in, but we also need to look at the cause. Why is this happening? So it's not an easy question to answer, but we've said many times the important thing is knowing when you're ovulating, and if you're not having a cycle, you won't know that. So I don't know if you want to add anything else, Larisa, to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think having persistently irregular cycles or absent periods is reason enough for any woman to worry and to understand that that isn't normal. And depending on the age of onset and the factors that have influenced you, you know, there's many different reasons behind why that can happen. Some of those reasons can be genetic, so things that you might have inherited, and sometimes, you know, that can't be reversed. But there are many, many other reasons as to why. And sometimes, you know, it can be as simple as perhaps over exercising. doing too much exercise, which can have an impact on your brain, which is in direct communication with your ovaries, and that is a very reversible factor. So I think it's really important you reach out to your GP, and that you ask to be referred to a specialist, so to a gynecologist, to investigate, to run some basic blood tests, to ask you some questions, and to do an ultrasound scan to just check and make sure that everything is okay. So, you know, the most important message I think we can get across here is that if you notice something is abnormal or not quite in keeping with what you consider to be normal, or you've spoken to someone else and they tell you you think you need to get advice, please go and act on that and make sure that you see someone and demand to see someone if you're not given that option. Really, really important to take that into your own hands. And most things are reversible as well. There's lots we can do about it. Okay, so next question is 35 too late to freeze your eggs? Should we say 35 and over, perhaps?
It's not ideal. If you were 30 and you were thinking of freezing your eggs, I wouldn't wait till you're 35 and then freeze them. I showed the data about IVF. If you're freezing your eggs, your live birth rate, your chance of having a baby, will be the same at the age that you froze the eggs. So if you freeze them at 40, your chance of getting pregnant will be the same as, or very similar to, someone who was 40. So as I said, we look at the data in the UK, US and other countries as 35 and under. So if you can, it's better to do it sooner rather than later. But if your life circumstances are such that you have no choice, then, you know, it's a personal decision. I wouldn't say don't do it or do it or whatever. It's your personal decision of what you want to do for your fertility. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything.
Yes, and that point, also I think we need to consider that absolutely 35 is a cutoff point. We you know, I think we've established that today, but 35 from 35 can differ. So like Joyce said, if these are the circumstances, then someone should consider the option and see what they're dealing with, and have some tests done and see, you know, how active their ovaries are and how well they're expected to respond to treatment. But that is, we're getting a bit too clinical here, but I'm just saying that absolutely below 35 is the recommendation. If we're above 35, it's a matter of circumstances and making the right choice. And
yeah, I think it's very individual, isn't it? Because everyone is slightly different. And this is why it's so important to go and get checked out and seek specialist advice and have a scan and have your blood tests and have a proper history taken, have an examination, so that that advice can be tailor matched to you personally. And if you are going to freeze your eggs, then that information is also going to help us in terms of advising how many rounds of egg freezing to do.
Absolutely. We need to consider how many rounds, and, you know, there's data that actually corresponds to how many eggs you need and how many actually correspond to live birth, or, you know, what can you expect out of freezing your eggs. It's not just one cycle or how many eggs you get out of that cycle. It's a lot more than that. And also another point with regards to the previous question, I just wanted to make very briefly, is that concerning irregular periods, you know, when we're seeing irregularities, it's definitely an indication that something may be wrong. And as Larisa very aptly pointed out, it's reason to go and get checked out and demand to get checked out. But infertility is not necessarily associated with irregular periods. Your period may be perfect. It may be it may be better than ever. That doesn't mean that, you know, infertility is not really cloaked underneath that. So that is something. What I'm, you know, the message here is, don't wait for your period to get irregular to start thinking that someone may be facing infertility. It really doesn't have all that much to do with that. So.
Yeah, such a good point. Thank you for that, Mara, because that's so true. And it's why, you know, 33% of heterosexual couples have no diagnosis behind what's causing their infertility. That's a huge number. You know, it's over a third of couples where actually everything seems to be fine on the outset, but you know, science can't necessarily find a reason yet. It's so infuriating to be in that situation. As you say, your periods may be absolutely perfect and regular, but it could be something else.
Thing we hear the patients say, but my period is fine. It's regular, I'm doing great, and my tests are great. Yes, but. So just something.
Yeah.
I'd really love us to. The last two questions were from Mariana, so I think I did answer. I've answered a few as well. Can I do? We've still got 52 people on. Can I just launch the last poll? Just asking everyone, have you learned anything about your fertility from this event? And good to see some feedback on that. And just to say that as we're coming to the close, we have got 2 events on tomorrow. We've got reproduction, race and reproduction, which is on tomorrow lunchtime, which is a wonderful event that I originally went to as part of Fertility Fest. And I was so happy that we were going to do this event again, from the Institute. And then tomorrow night, we've got an event that's fully sold out about open water swimming. And Tuesday, we've got a dance representing a woman's experience of ovarian cancer on Tuesday, which is a late addition to our program. And Tuesday night, a film about being a female scientist. So if you want to book in for any of those, go to the Institute for Women's Health website. So we're just getting the results in now. We've got about another 10 people that might want to answer. But I think if we all look at if the panel look at the questions, I think we've done everything now, really.
Yeah, there's just one, Joyce, that I really want to ask, simply because it's one of my favorite topics, and you probably know what it's going to be, but does stress have an influence? One of the most controversial subjects within fertility, and I perhaps shouldn't have opened this can of worms because this could last forever. But in brief, would everyone like to contribute a little something towards this last question?
Can we start with Emma?
Firstly, no one has ever relaxed when they're being told to relax. I just want to say that. If people tell you to chill out or just relax because you can't have a baby, you automatically clench up from rage. Secondly, I've really been diving into this recently. You know, I think we can all agree the answer is not, stress isn't going to stop you from getting pregnant. One thing I found out that was quite interesting is that stress can sometimes stop you from ovulating. So if you're having a month where you're really, really, really stressed, you might not ovulate. That said, you're not going to have months and months and months where you don't ovulate, right? I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So I think that's probably potentially where that kind of misconception comes from, is that occasionally you can get so stressed you don't ovulate. That's not going to keep happening, right? Am I right?
Yeah, can definitely have an impact on ovulation. That's true. Yeah, before I say a little bit as well, what do you think, Joyce?
So I just think going through IVF is incredibly stressful. So I cried and got angry and depressed and anxious and every single mental health issue you can have. And it never leaves you as well. I still cry now. When I'm remembering what I went through. So yeah, if anyone says just relax, it's just so annoying. But I think for our own mental health, we've got to try, and I've got a lot better at relaxing as I've got older, and I wish I knew these things when I was younger, but it is now very much in our lifestyle about mindfulness. And I do a meditation every morning before I get out of bed, and you know, people are doing a lot more. So for your own well-being going through this fertility journey, it's really important for your relationship with your partner, with your family, friends, everybody, and your own mental health to just think about, what do I need to do to reduce stress, and what do you need to do? It's going to be different for every person. So just finding the best way for your own well-being to manage your stress.
And Mariana, Alexandra, do you want to say anything?
Yes, I want to say that unfortunately people do get pregnant from being raped, for example, or under extremely unhappy circumstances. There are a lot of unwanted pregnancies, and you don't need to do meditation or try to relax to get pregnant. So yes, these are great tips, but what I get in my office is women asking, do I need to meditate every day just to be able to? So no, you don't need to do any of it. So this is great that we are all talking about this. And what we know, is that stress can affect your fertility indirectly. If you're eating when you're stressed, like me, for example, then probably it will affect your BMI, and then it will affect your fertility. If you argue a lot with your partner, you won't have the probability of having intercourse is low. The probability of having an orgasm, which also helps, of course, is low. So there are a lot of indirect things that, yes, you might try to work out, but I think that you can also just, say, well, this is just too much for me. I'm already doing everything I can. I'm already informed. And, I can't have one glass of wine, for example, and try to not relax, but send everybody to, to hell or something like that. And don't mind, opinions, because it's a paradox, really. People don't get informed about fertility, but the most thing we got asked is, when are you going to have children after, going to live with your partner? And you're having the first one, and people are asking you if they're having a brother or a sister. So it's the most odd relationship that we have with fertility, really. So I think that my short answer is no. So don't. You can be stressed and be pregnant.
Don't stress about stress. Don't stress about stress.
The worst thing you can say to someone, right? Relax. Just relax. It's all going to be fine.
I think stress really affects our decisions. So I completely agree with Mariana saying, it affects indirectly. Our the physiology of the reproductive system is pretty robust. It doesn't really fall behind because something happened and we're stressed. If it's chronic, it's a different situation. We have to see cortisol levels and so on and so forth. But it's about our decisions, and also a lot of work on the psychology of these couples and these women, and self-blame about how I feel, I deserve this, why, anger, all these feelings, so many feelings. But I think just, we need to be kind to ourselves. Especially if you are undergoing infertility and preeclampsia.
No, absolutely. And Alexandra, any last?
If you're stressed, you're stressed. Don't worry, your system can take it. So, but the indirect effect is something different.
I would just like to give my insight as embryologist, and at least here in Portugal, I work in a public hospital. We have to talk a lot with our patients, and sometimes we have to give bad news, and we have to say what we don't want to say. And here I have to say that the work that Dr. Mariana and psychologists do in our centers is crucial. And I think that we, at least in the National Health Service, we have to give we actually need more psychologists working with us, and that is really, really important. We only have one psychologist working in our center, and we really need her to help us with couples. So yeah, I think that the psychologist is it's crucial here in this process, but we need help. We need a multidisciplinary team to deal with that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that point, actually. The fact that we need to address this holistically, whatever, just to add my part to this for what it's worth, whatever your personal opinion might be with stress, I think we can all agree that our relationships with stress are complicated and complex. There are many confounding factors that affect how we perceive stress and how we deal with stress. Every person is different, and what may be stressful for someone may not be so stressful for another person. And absolutely, a bit like, someone whose BMI is over 30, someone who's highly stressed can still get pregnant. It doesn't mean that you can't, but there are certainly things that we can do to try and reduce our levels of stress, which will ultimately benefit our physiology and also, our autonomic nervous system as well. I've been learning a lot recently about heart rate variability, from the HeartMath Institute, which is super interesting and exciting, where they're measuring variations in our heart rate in response to stress and how this affects our entire physiology, including fertility. So I think it's a subject we're going to hear more and more about, and it's where I've done a fair bit of reading and research, and yeah, highly controversial but exciting as well. So before we wrap up, Joyce, do you want to tell us about the poll results? Because I've just seen that flash through, and thankfully most people have learned something, right?
Wrap up now. So I'm sure all these, over 90% of people have learned something. So
yeah, yay.
And so we did run half an hour, just slightly over half an hour over, but Larisa, you did a great job. We have got through all the questions and our panel have been absolutely fantastic. So I just wanted to thank everybody who has spoken, all of our lovely panel, Alexandra, Mara, Mariana, Emma and Larisa for wonderfully chairing, and to all the people that asked questions and took part. So there will be some further information on Global Women Connected with some of the links that we talked about. And thank you all very much. And thank you for your time. I wish everyone a healthy fertility journey.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for hosting, Joyce, as well, and for organizing this. It's been such a joy to be a part of it with all of you, and yeah, happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Yes, happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
Lots of wonderful celebrations. Thanks very much, everyone.
Lovely to meet you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.